Hey there guys, it's Metro, and today we're going to be continuing the series of videos where we talk about tank. Now, could you imagine if I did the whole video like that? That'd be pretty funny, right? No, probably not. Anyway, so we're going to be continuing the series where we compare and contrast all 6 tanks, giving a evolution of my opinions over the weeks. If you guys are seeing this video as the first one out of the series, you have about 2 hours preceding it. I would really recommend watching it, as I'm not really going to cover the same things every time, but ultimately the goal here is to kind of learn as we're going. What we've been doing is playing all 6 tanks in the beta. We've leveled 5 out of 6 of them to 120, probably skipping Monk in case you're not aware. But regardless, we're doing dungeons on the weekends and during the streams and stuff like that, rotating, going down the list, playing one at a time, and effectively trying to learn as much as I can about all 6 tanks to be able to, first of all, decide what I want to play, and then second of all, learn enough to be able to make adequate comparisons that'll eventually come in the form of a massive video, like I did at the beginning of Legion. If you haven't seen that video, it's understandable, but it's one of the most popular videos on the channel, so I want to try to replicate that, and I want to be able to move forward with adequate knowledge of tanks. So anyway, getting right into it, this is going to be an update to the previous weekend. We did another full weekend, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday, wall-to-wall, about probably closer to 15 hours of just straight tank dungeon runs, and I learned a lot this weekend. And not only did I learn a lot, but I got some Azurite gear, I got some actual gear, and some classes are starting to come together. And a lot of you guys have helped me with some insight, and especially on Prot Warrior and Brew Master Monk. So those are the ones that I really want to talk about. But regardless, we're just going to go down the list. I'm going to tell you my opinions. So from last time, Death Knight, the one big thing that I really have to tell you guys about is that I did actually get 2 Eternal Rune Weapon Azurite pieces. So if you don't know what that is, it's a trait that it gives you strength every time you use Pop Dancing Rune Weapon, which is whatever. But it also, for every rune you spend while Dancing Rune Weapon is up, you get 0.5 extra seconds on Dancing Rune Weapon. And this has a maximum extension of 5 total seconds. So if you only have one trait and use a Marrow Rend, you will get 1 extra second on Dancing Rune Weapon. This was something I hypothesized on a long time ago. I made a thread on it. Literally seemed to be no interest in it whatsoever, despite this pretty much being the most important thing that possibly could happen to any tank, really. And finally, I got 2 pieces of gear that have the 2, both Eternal Rune Weapon on it. We tested it extensively on Friday. I think it was Friday's live stream. Might have actually... Yeah, it's probably Fridays. I can't remember. The days all blur together. But anyway, it does indeed increase it twice. So it's still only 5 seconds max. That hasn't changed. But if I use a Marrow Rend, which uses 2 runes with 1 piece on, it gives me 1 extra second. And with 2 pieces on, it gives me 2 extra seconds. The reason this is a big deal is because there was a lot of debate whether or not this would be the case. People have said that they've tested it and it doesn't work this way, blah, blah, blah. But I do think the concern here is that it might differ per trait. So I do need to try to get all of them. There's like 3 or 4 out there that I really want to test. Especially, there's 2 for DK, that one, and then the Marrow Rend one, and then there's 1 for Bear that I really need to test. And I think Monk, and there's some other ones that I really want to check out. So that's kind of the goal. We want to check out this stuff. That's one of the main iterative processes that we're going to be going through over the next few weeks, because I really want to be able to compare the Azurite traits, which are pretty much going to be a fundamental staple of the progression of your tank over the first few months of the expansion. So anyway, all I can say is Blood DK, I have 10% haste now. I finally got a belt. You guys can tell, I think that's a pretty big step up for my Death Knight. He's like 326 now, even though I'm wearing like a 266 belt. I had no belt on last time I made this video, so regardless, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, 10% haste, still feeling hyper slow, but still top in the HPS. I'm pretty satisfied, but definitely really a big problem is going to be how much rune generation they are missing at the beginning of an expansion, and I think I'm probably going to just have to stack haste. I really don't like doing that, but I think maybe you guys will agree that haste is going to be more important than item level for the first few months of the expansion. But anyway, we'll see how that plays out. So that's Death Knight. We got Demon Hunter next. Now, we actually had a little bit of I'm not really sure how to describe this. Somebody kind of challenged me. They said, the only reason you think Demon Hunter is overpowered is because you're just basically jealous. I don't know. Forget the semantics. But they were saying that it's not overpowered. You're just coming off a world where you think Death Knight should be the best, and anything you see that might be better upsets you. So I guess I can understand the criticism, but I don't think that's the case. One of the viewers on the channel, Hannah, said that she did, I think, at least one, if not more, Mythic Pluses this weekend with a Demon Hunter tank who was very geared. And she claimed that he was doing absolutely absurd DPS, and a large percentage of it was Spirit Bomb. I would identify that same problem for me in the dungeons I've been doing. I'm just sub 300 item level, so it's been slow getting the characters geared up when we're splitting our reference on all 6 of these. But still getting a lot of percentage out of Spirit Bomb, I think it's a bit absurd for a talent. And I definitely think it has to get nerfed. And that's one of the biggest things, right? Like, they're a leech tank, okay? The more they deal damage, the more they heal. And we talked about this with Blood as well this weekend. You know, the more damage you do, the more you leech. So if they're doing way too much damage out of the gate with an ability that's a talent, first of all, and also grants you the ability to get even more leech, then it's overtuned. I don't know what to tell you. And another thing that we found this weekend especially was I'd be pulling these real big packs. You saw it in yesterday's stream, or Saturday's stream. I'd be pulling these real big packs in freehold, right? Jumping into 3 or 4 packs converging, just going nuts, doing like 25k DPS, and I'd have active mitigation up. I would be untouchable. The glancing blows were nuts. They would not even touch me, right? And then as soon as it falls off, deleted. So I really do think that the mitigation is overtuned as well. I have to say, I think that Demon Hunter is simply just, you know, kind of notched to 11 right now, and it's going to be brought back down. Now, there's a very real possibility that they do want Demon Hunter to be this very flimsy outside of active mitigation spec and do the most DPS. And this might be their niche. It's difficult to say, but as of right now, I will safely say that Demon Hunter will be the best Mythic Plus tank, just hands down, simply because they have 2 of the most important buffs in the game, and that is the magic percent 5%, and that's just mandatory. You're gonna need a Demon Hunter in any serious Mythic Plus group, which is kind of a shame, but this is what you asked for, so you get this back. And then, of course, Consume Magic, which is a friendly Dispel, and that is very useful for a tank to have. It's now the only tank in the game with that outside of a Blood Elf. So, considering you can also be a Blood Elf, yeah, it's going to be the best utility tank. So, provided it doesn't get completely nerfed damage-wise or mitigation-wise, they will be extremely strong. And that is something that I definitely saw and learned this weekend. Now, Paladin is slowly growing on me. I really like, you know, what I think is going to happen with haste for Paladin. It's similar to Blood DK, but this was the tank that I feel like I made the least progress with overall in terms of, yeah, my opinion on them. I like them more and more each time I play them, but realistically, they're still kind of in between. Now, last video, I made the comment saying that Prop Paladin has very poor utility, and it kind of upset a few people. So I'm going to reiterate that now that I have the floor to do so. So Prop Paladin's effective utility is limited to Bop, or Spell Warding, of course. Freedom, of course. Breaking Roots is relatively interesting. And really, it kind of culminates all in a kit that allows you to propagate the life of your group and help them with healing and, you know, absorbs or immunities, not necessarily absorbs, obviously. But that is kind of their main kit. And, of course, they have the ranged interrupts, and, you know, they could like cast Flash of Light or res out of combat. But these things I don't really consider utility, right? So the main things that I would look at from a utility standpoint is the fact that they could cast Hand of the Protector on other players. Now, that's been nerfed in BFA. Not only does it heal for less, but it heals based on how much your health is. So if you're full and you're healing somebody else, they're not going to get any benefit from that. But if you're both low, that would be the time to use it, but you're going to need to use it on yourself instead. So it makes it harder. It's now on the GCD, which makes it a lot harder to use in difficult situations. And you don't have relics or the helm anymore for it. That was the main reason it was so good. So a lot of people are saying, oh, you used to say Prop Pally had the third best utility out of all tanks. It's just been nerfed too much. The self-healing was the reason, okay? And without that, I don't know where they stand. Things like Bop and Freedom, it's just not enough, right? And yeah, I guess, you know, Lay on Hands is still on there, but like, if you're going to use a 10-minute heal 10-minute CD on a group member, you better be damn sure you're never going to die. So, I don't know. They have a very balanced defensive kit, and I really do like the prop Paladin overall because they have very fun electric offense now that Shield of the Righteous is a cleave or whatever, like a frontal cone type thing. I really like that. Their defensive kit is very wide, very... yeah, it's unique as well. It's very different than any other tank, but I think they're just way too limited by the fact that they have very, very non-applicable, that's the real way to describe it, utility, okay? It might not be terrible. They might have a couple more utilities than people, you know, whatever you think or whatever, but it's just not very applicable, especially now that the healing element of it has been nerfed so heavily, okay? And, of course, their mobility is god-awful, but I definitely want to test Paladin more, okay? So, anyway, that's that. Now, we're on to very interesting topics here, okay? Prot Warrior. Now, Prot Warrior was one coming into this, and if I didn't stream yesterday, I would have a completely different topic, but or a completely different discussion here. But Prot Warrior, I was panning. I was completely giving up on it. Frankly, they take so much more damage than any other tank. We talked about this in the last video, but I'd say it's quite clear that they are the least defensive tank outright right now. I was talking about this live. We were doing the dungeons, and a couple people suggested I change some talents. Now, like I said last time, I don't really play a Prot Warrior. It's been a long time. Somebody took offense to this. Yet again, I make a reply to them. They don't reply to me. What a surprise. If you're watching this, let's have a discussion, okay? But anyway, I really don't know Prot Warrior very well, so it's very helpful that you guys can assist me in ways that I can improve on it, and you did. So I switched some talents. I tried Into the Fray instead of Ignore Pain, or now what's it called? Impending Victory, and we tried some other talent, the Thunderclap talent when you have Avatar up. That was very good. I didn't realize, the Thunderclap generated that much rage. So effectively, what we did here was give ourselves a lot more access to rage to the point now where I can keep shield block up considerably more often and have surplus rage for Ignore Pain. And of course, obviously more offense too. So this actually really helped Warrior. I would say they were just like 1 out of 10 in terms of defense. I'd say they're well closer to like 5 out of 10, but I still think it's very comfortable to say that they are the weakest mitigator right now, and especially considering magic damage, as they basically have nothing for it now that Ignore Pain is so weak. I mean, they still have Shield Wall, or Spell Reflect, which is an incredibly good utility, and I'd say still Prot Warrior has one of the best utility kits outright, probably second best to Vengeance. Very interesting utility spread, but you got to actually be able to reflect something for that to work well. Otherwise, it's a very mediocre magic reduction. So I still think Prot Warrior is pretty weak, but thanks to your guys' assessment and help, and if anybody else out there knows any tricks or tips, I'd be more than interested in hearing it. But yeah, I definitely think Prot Warrior is very fun offensively. Mobility is great, and their their utility is really cool. I think it's probably going to be my second favorite utility kits. But in terms of where they are on the beta, they're just one knob turn away from being where they need to be. Right now, they're really weak. A lot of people are saying, like, well, I guess that's it for Warrior. I played Warrior back when I was 4 years old. I'm gonna have to re-roll now. They suck. It's like, dude, it's just one knob turn. I'm telling you, it's gonna get fixed. So, anyway, on to Bear, which again is now looking terrible on this character. But regardless, I'm really coming into my own on Bear. I'm really surprised to see how many people dislike Bear on the beta. But all I could say to them is, I don't know. I'm not seeing the same gameplay, and of course, I like things that maybe they don't like, and the thing that I like the most is Brambles. Brambles, I am in love with it. It's turning into the new Umbilicus Eternus for me, where every time I play the spec, I'm enthralled by just how effective it is. It's a great defensive talent. It's a great offensive talent, and it adds an extra CD offensive, potentially not really defensive, but mostly offensive. And that is really fun. I really like this lashback damage model that Bear has. Effectively, every dungeon I run, every trash pack I do, at least 50, if not closer to 60% of my damage is utterly passive. That's including melees, including Brambles, the lashback thorns damage from that, and of course Moonfire Dot, which, with Lunar Guardian or Galactic Guardian, whatever it's called, is extremely strong. Now, unfortunately, we still have not gotten the Frenzied Regen shoulders or whatever, you know, the Azurite piece. I definitely want to get them. They come from Shrine of the Storm, so I just need to queue specific for it for a couple times. But regardless, it's actually very interesting that now we know what we know about Eternal Rune Weapon, kind of shed some light on it. So I'm thinking that, you know, unless there's some weird inconsistency with how it stacks, that Druid is going to have one of the strongest, if not two of the strongest, Azurite traits in the game. We just got to get them and test them. So that's where we are. But if I had to choose right now, I'd probably be leveling a Druid second. So my goal, obviously, level Blood DK first, and then another tank. Which one's it going to be? You know what I mean? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? That's not even a tank. So I'm probably going to go with Bear Druid. And the main reason I would say is because I would also like to do some healing as Resto. And I think Druid in general is very flexible, very fun. And even though some people might think it's boring, I still think their utility is quite potent. Having a speed boost is nothing to sneeze at, even though it's been nerfed substantially. And Battle Res is absolutely mandatory in any group. And somebody pointed something out on the forums that the only 5 buff classes in the game have no Battle Res. So you're gonna, I mean, if you're for some reason only fixated on these passive buffs, Warrior, Mage, Priest, and Demon Hunter and Monk bring, you're gonna have to fit a Battle Res in there somehow. Somebody's gonna have to bring a tome or whatever it is, like a scroll, to get one of those buffs. You're not gonna do Mythic Plus with no Battle Reses. I'm sorry, it's just not gonna happen. So, you know, if it was up to me, I might bring a Druid Healer, Blood DK, etc. So anyway, Battle Res very useful. So anyway, that's it for Monk that's it for Druid, and finally Monk. This was the one that I think was the most, there was the most revelations of this weekend, and I did a little bit of leveling in it. Obviously, last time we made this video, it was still 110. I got a couple levels, and we did a lot of dungeons. Now, Monk got 2 new talents this week. A Guard, which I don't actually know what they replaced, but it's on the same tier as the High Tolerance, which is a very, very competitive talent. And then it got a new one called Spitfire, which is on the same talent row as Light Brewing. So I've been talking to 2 specific sources so far. One of them's Morgraine, good friend of mine. He basically let me know that he thinks Spitfire is a very, very, very poor talent. It's not competitive with Light Brewing at all, and I could totally understand why he would think that. For me, I really like the extra addition it adds to the rotation, but that's coming from a very selfish, kind of like a not min-maxing point of view. And realistically, he's probably right. And then I spoke to another guy in the comments on the VOD from this weekend, and he said that he did, I think it was 4 or 5 Mythic Pluses, like plus 4 or 5 Mythic Pluses as a Brew Master, and he said he was absolutely getting demolished. Stagger works great to mitigate the damage, but he said I was taking so much Stagger so frequently that the healer simply could not keep up with healing me and the rest of the group at the same time. So he's pretty much echoing the same sentiments that I thought, that, you know, the Stagger model is great for raids where you have multiple healers healing you all the time, you have multiple heals healing you all the time without any effort. But when it's just you and one healer, you better be able to pull your fair share of healing. Now, this was another thing that we talked about, how their Azurite traits seemingly are bridging the gap in that way. And one of the key ones is one that whenever you use Breath of Fire and it ticks or whatever, anytime it ticks, it has a chance to spawn an extra healing orb. Now, I think this sounds really good. I've yet to really test it. I do have one of the traits on it, but of course, 114, not really doing anything that might be interesting content. So it's difficult to know for sure. But I definitely like some of the Azurite traits. I love Guard, but Guard only absorbs the staggered damage, doesn't absorb damage outright. So it's like hugely weaker than it was in MoP. But I still like the idea. I really like it, and I love the way it looks, frankly. So that's, again, a little selfish, not really thinking like a competitive player, but I can see myself enjoying Monk more. I think their kit has gotten a lot better over time for 5-mans. Whether or not their mitigation is sufficient, that's still out to lunch. But I think the fact that they now bring a physical 5% damage buff, they have the option to have leg sweep or Ring of Peace, both now, right? Because that was a big point of contention in the previous expansion. And another thing that you guys helped me realize this weekend, brought up under the radar here, is the fact that they still have the Black Ox statue, which if you put down and taunt on it, it will AoE taunt everything around you. This is probably a bigger deal than I originally realized. When somebody brought it up, I was like, it's just not really needed. And the statue itself doesn't really do a great job of gathering mobs. But it'll definitely do a good enough job of getting them off your healer or something like that if they spawn in the middle of an encounter. And more so, that AoE taunt might be more important than it sounds. There's a lot of times when I roll into a group and somebody's already done damage before I'm even able to get a Keg Smash off, and the mobs just go splitting up all over the place. So I don't know, but of course it again competes with the two biggest utilities that they have, right? At least they already have Leg Sweep. So maybe Ring of Peace isn't that useful. And I think it might not be. I think Ring of Peace might be a little superfluous in this day and age. And it was very useful in some situations in Legion, and maybe it will still be in BFA. But I think you're going to get away with not needing it very often. So that does give you the availability to use this Black Ox statue. Obviously, I'd prefer the stun augmentation, where it's a larger stun, easier to stun multiple targets, especially as, you know, unless you have multiple ways to silence or grip in, might not always be able to get all of them in at once with the Brew Master. And also, you know, like affixes like maybe Skittish or any type of kiting situation, it could be valuable having the statue, whereas the stun might be, you know, something that's already doubled down on your group already has a couple stuns. So I don't know. I'm not sure about this, but I definitely think it's worth noting. So it's the first time I've recognized that, and I'm glad that you guys helped me do that. So anyway, another thing, just one last thing. People are asking me to give a more tiered structure. I really don't want to do this, but I am going to be making an entire video on this, okay? So if I had to say, if I had to give like a TLDR of why each tank is what it is, and if I had to give a general, just very general list, this is what I would do. This is for 5-mans only, all right? Like I said, we're going to do an entire video, including raids, every type of content, you know, everything that we have experience in. But anyway, for 5-mans, number one has to be Vengeance. Simply has the best utility. Currently, it has overpowered offense and relatively overpowered defense. I think those two will get nerfed, but as long as the utility stays the same, it will simply be invaluable. Having that 5% damage buff is going to be 100% mandatory, as almost every spec in the game does some type of spell damage. And the only thing that I think might be able to dethrone that is if Vengeance is, or if Havoc is really high meta as well. If you see multiple Demon Hunters competing for spots, and the Demon Hunter DPS is simply more valuable than the Demon Hunter tank, you're probably gonna, you know, you'll get relegated. You won't be as strong. It won't be a slam dunk. Number two, I'd really have to stick with Blood DK. The self-healing model, even through the haste problems, is still absurd. I can still easily heal myself more than the actual healer can, easily top the healing charts on many packs. And this is completely unprepared. I have no flask. I have no, you know, potions. I have some potions, but I don't really use them. I don't have any enchants, any gems, nothing like that. And I'm still frankly learning. But the main thing is the haste is terrible, and it's very difficult to get a nice string of death strikes. If you played in Legion, you would know that you get hit really hard on trash. You can get 2 back-to-back death strikes, heal yourself to full. I've been saying this for years now. I could heal myself to full in 2 globals. My patented phrase for Blood DK, and it's the truth. But in the Battle for Azeroth beta, the haste that we can have is simply not necessarily enough to oftentimes heal ourselves to full in 2 globals. So I've been experimenting, but I still think things like Death Grip, the slow talent that they have, even though they're definitely not going to be a strong kiting, and that slow is definitely weaker than it was in Legion. They're the only tank with that type of slow, even though it's definitely not as strong. You know, there's other 50% slows in the game, but that slow is still very good in case you need something like that. And of course, they still have battle res, multiple grips. This is just something that's always going to be useful. Blood DK is always going to be in the top half of this list. Now, after that is where it starts to get messy, and I really haven't given this much thought. But if I had to say things, if I had to give a list and it worked the way it should, like things worked the way they should, I would have to say Warrior number 3. And this is because Spell Reflect, I feel like, is going to be an extremely potent utility, but outright their utility kit is just far and away so much better than any other classes. They have Commanding Shout, which I think is extremely potent in any situation, but especially 5-mans. They now have a baseline stun, which has the shortest CD of all the stuns in the game, and there is an option to make it back to its old ways where it would be up even further. And of course, they have Spell Reflect, which I think is something that you're going to see some value from. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, then maybe that'll change my thoughts on it in the future. But I really do think there's going to be something that you could Spell Reflect that's going to really be a big deal. We kind of saw it in Legion a little bit, but Prot Warrior was so off meta, it didn't really matter. In fact, we saw something very bizarre where they were able to Spell Reflect really weird mechanics. And like on Dargle, on Neltharion Slayer, you could Spell Reflect his knockback and it would knock him back. That got fixed. But regardless, I definitely think Warrior deserves a look here, and their offense is really nothing to be, nothing to be down on either. So once they get the defense patched up, I think I'm gonna have to go Prot Warrior number 3. Then number 4, I think it's pretty comfortable with Prot Pally. They still have the real deal, you know, the self healing they have makes them so much better than Prot Warrior. If only they had better utility. If I always say this, if Prot Warrior and Prot Pally could fuse, if you gave the utility of Prot Paladin or Prot Warrior to Prot Paladin, and you gave the self-healing of Prot Paladin to Prot Warrior, they would be the best tank in the game, if you ask me. And that's completely ignoring the faults with block and any other mechanic that might be a little bit stagnant on these two tanks. So I would definitely say, you know, things that hold Prot Paladin back are, of course, mobility and their utility, but their self-healing and defensive kit is very titanic, and their damage is very fun and very agile. So after that, I would definitely have to say Brew Master. Brew Master, even though I've been told that they have a very bad defensive kit currently, I just don't think that's going to be the case. I think Brew Master is a very safe defensive pick no matter what. They have the ability to really smooth out a lot of damage. And I definitely think these Azurite traits are going to help them a lot. Plus, their utility is simply too much to ignore. Like I said, especially with now AoE Taunt potentially in the rotation there. And, of course, the 5% physical damage. Not a lot of things do physical damage as often as magic. But, you know, you see your hunters, your rogues, your warriors, you know, the tank as well. You know, maybe even a Holy Paladin, something like that. They're going to get some benefit from this, and it's really, you really want to have these things. So again, if Windwalker is super on meta, then that's going to maybe switch Brewmaster with the final spot, that being Bear. And I think Bear is without question the weakest 5-man tank. They just really don't have anything that makes them special. I frankly really like them, and I think Battle Res and Roar are good enough, but their utility is definitely not, like, I think it's more applicable than Paladins. Their defense is extremely good. They're very sturdy, and I think with the right Azurite traits, you're going to see a near unkillable Bear. But they have no burst offense, even though I really like how their offense works. I think they have the worst offensive kit in the game, and their utility hasn't gotten any better. Their mobility hasn't gotten any better, and their defense, you know, while it could be very good, I just don't think it could hang with a Demon Hunter or a Blood DK, something like that, which is going to be doing a ton of self-healing. But we'll see. We'll see what Frenzied Regen with that talent, or whatever that trait, how that works out. But anyway, that's everything. A little bit longer than I expected, but regardless, this is this week's update. By next week, I hope to be in Heroics on all of these. All of my tanks are about 300 now, minus Brewmaster, of course. Probably never get him to 120 and get into Heroics, but yeah, I only need 1 or 2 more upgrades on each of these characters, and they will be ready for Heroics. And then I want to start testing out some healing as well on Druid, because I want to be able to see what other tanks do as well. And that will be the final phase. At that point, if we can get them ready for maybe some Mythic Zeros, that'll kind of be the last-ditch thing. And we're coming up to the end of the window here where I could discuss this. The plan is to stream this 3 days out of the 4 days for the next 3 or 4 weeks. Whenever the pre-patch comes out, we're done now. Skitty pop with this, and we're going to move on to a full-time 4 days on live WoW again, dealing with the pre-patch and learning stuff there. But regardless, I think I'm favoring Bear as my second favorite tank right now, but we have a lot to learn. So look forward to that. More streams. Tuesday is going to be on live, but then Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday hopefully will be on the beta. So thanks for watching. We will see you guys in the next one.